David Mason, the Director of Public Health, and today we're going to talk about the request from the Wastewater Investment Infrastructure Fund for the funding of the CWRMP, which is on this May's town meeting. And just we're here as a reminder, since it's been a while since the town approved of the WIF, and today we have with us George Dunham, the town administrator, and Mike Miller, the chair of the selectmen. And we're going to reintroduce you to the WIF, when it came about, how it works, and the purpose of it and what we're funding. So, Bud, do you want to take off on, have a discussion on what the WIF is?
Sure, thanks, Dave. The WIF, as you had mentioned, is the Water Infrastructure Investment Fund, and it's a special funding capacity that was established by the state about a dozen years ago. And Sandwich was actually the first town in the state to take advantage of it. So 2 years ago, voters at both a special town meeting and then a town election voted to adopt the WIF. And it's funded through a 2% surcharge on people's tax bills. And when the selectmen in both public votes started that, we also decreased the Community Preservation Act surcharge from 3% to 2%, so the net difference was a 1% surcharge.
And just for clarification too, it was November of 2018 where they approved it at town meeting, and May, at the ballots, May of 2019.
Right. Yep.
Okay. So as far as you discussed the cost to the taxpayers, and as we're talking, there'll be some slides that are being presented. Do you want to break that out? What we're funding with this?
Sure. So the interesting part is the way the legislation works with a WIF. You can't appropriate money at town meeting until you actually have money in the account, with the one exception is if you are issuing debt for a bigger project. Most likely in this case, installing a wastewater treatment plant or sewer collection lines. So money didn't start coming into the WIF until last July 1st. And right now the balance is about $1.2 million. So we're recommending a transfer of $1 million to help fund a number of different projects that we need, as you said, Dave, to advance our CWRMP, or Comprehensive Water Resources Management Plan, and to sort of lay the groundwork and to try to get a wastewater treatment plant and the collection line sewer ready, shovel ready. So that's what we're trying to accomplish at the town meeting. It should be noted that the list of projects that we're trying to come up with include not only the preliminary design of the collection system, but also to try to evaluate some of the water that's underneath the ground, the treatment and disposal capabilities, updating some parts of our CWRMP. There's some required regulatory filings that we have to do, some technical assistance in working with our neighboring towns. And then one of the more unique things is we're trying to do some drainage improvement projects in terms of best management practices around upper and lower Shawm ponds. So all those things add up to a little more than $1.4 million. So we're appropriating $1 million in May. And then hopefully at a special town meeting in the fall or next May, we'll come up with the difference.
Okay, and so as far as once we receive that money, and the purpose of the WIF was for the Comprehensive Water Resource Management Plan implementation, Chief Miller, what does the CWRMP get us? What are we looking to achieve with that?
Well, I think a little history for the public is that a number of years ago, a lawsuit was filed by the Conservation Law Foundation against for improving the water quality on Cape Cod. The federal decision came down and they called it the 208, so if you hear that mentioned, that's where it's from. And that set guidelines and definitions and requirements towards improving the water quality. Sandwich had done through some funding they had received on a settlement at the base, had contracted many years ago, at least 5 or 6, 7 years ago, and to do a comprehensive water evaluation, not just a sewer evaluation. And by doing so, I think there's a 500-page report that came out about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, which was their final report, and public can get access to that if they wish. But the real purpose of it was to give us a clear example of what we had to do to improve and what we didn't have to do to improve in some areas. So when it came down to funding, all of the Cape is looking at trying to fund how they're going to do wastewater based on this law. And this WIF was the attempt by the state to come up with a funding source that could be used for these purposes. So in our plan, we're looking at, we have concerns with the ponds, which this plan addresses. We have concerns with the 3 septic systems at the 3 schools, the high schools being the most concerned right now, that have to be dealt with at some point in the future at a very great expense if it's not with a wastewater plan. We have groundwater and drainage, as Bud said, where the waters are going. And the overall goal was, if we improve and get the system in place, economic development would be an easier thing to do if a business is coming in knowing they have a direct connection to wastewater and not have to put in a plant on their own. So all of this is a plus. It's something we have to do. It isn't a question that we had a choice. Every town is being faced because of this 208 order to do something. And I think we're way ahead of the game, and it's a compliment to the boards before me and for you guys that we've gone this far.
Okay, so this was then, the CWRMP was approved by the town, and the WIF was approved by the town. This is a transfer of existing money?
Yep, exactly. So the money's already rolled in. The amount that the average taxpayer pays is just under $60 a year right now. So that money's collected in a separate account, and now we're going to fund the first projects out of that special fund.
Okay, and Bud had listed off those items that we're funding. This is not a menu request, I'll say that. This is total because, as was stated, the intent of this is actual strategy to get a project shovel-ready, potentially even for federal stimulus funding,
Yeah.
if it comes available.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing for the public to know, that we're trying to leverage those funds that we're raising locally with monies that may be available at either the federal or the county level. And there's some great recent examples of the county funding some of these bigger projects to the tune of almost 25% of the principal, and I know that'll be the topic of a future discussion.
Yep, so we're planning for that now, and as Chief Miller had brought up also, we have a big issue with our schools. DEP has been good to us thus far, but as far as enforcement against what's occurring with those treatment plants, and this is part of this bigger plan to roll them into a bigger treatment plant. So is there anything else we want to add to this, what we're anticipating here?
I would just say, I think the last several boards of selectmen and all the town leadership has felt for a long time that this is the #1 environmental problem, not only facing Sandwich, but the entire Cape. So as much as we're proud of the new public safety building, what we're trying to do with the Center for Active Living, the library, 106A, this really is the most important, most expensive need that we have to address for the next 50 years. And so the townspeople were very wise in voting to support the WIF, because it's by far the cheapest way that we can go about it. And as you said, Dave, trying to leverage other funds will only help hold down those costs.
Okay, anything else, Chief Miller?
No, it just, again, we have to do these things. It's not a question of maybes or whatever. We have to do them. And we're going to have to do them somewhat soon rather than later. So this is why you're seeing the first steps at town meeting to use some of these fundings for either designs or moving the process forward. And hopefully some of the issues can be dealt with, smaller issues right away, like the ponds and drainage, but it already mentioned, so.
Okay, and I'll point out that the strategy we are funding here is for a very aggressive plan. We've talked about within 10 years that we'd like to see, that we intend on seeing something happen. So this is what the purpose of this money is.
And I think another key thing for the public to remember, that we're way more fortunate than most of the other towns on Cape in terms of size of our problem and the cost and the zeros after the numbers. Thankfully, because most of our water flows to the north in Cape Cod Bay, we're in relatively good shape. And roughly only a quarter to a third of our properties will need to be on a sewer line long-term, which is far less than most of the other towns.
But there are situations we need to take responsibility for in our abutting communities and watersheds.
Definitely.
And so as we go forward, there'll be additional videos. This was the highlight to initiate and a reminder to the community what the WIF is, the purpose of it, and with what direction we're going with it, and we're going to break it down into smaller components with additional videos to explain each component as we go forward, so that you have that information for town meeting. Anything else, gentlemen?
Covered it.
Thank you.
Okay, great. No, thank you guys for coming to give the background on that. And what we will be doing is you'll see additional videos coming forward, and we'll see you at town meeting. Be informed. Thank you.
Thank you.